Okay, so I am starting another live class. Every 2 weeks I do some kind of class for you guys on health and wellness and just educating you on health ownership. And it's my passion as a doctor to educate my patients on how to live their best life possible. And if I can bring any wisdom for any of you during my classes, it literally brings me so much joy to know that you are becoming a healthier version of yourself and therefore doing amazing things with your life. So I am just waiting for people to hop on. Awesome. So this is so exciting. I love this. You can see it's light outside. I'm so excited. It's finally sunshine, which we're going to talk a little bit about that in one of the tests that we run on patients. As you can imagine, vitamin D. But I'm going to wait just a few more seconds to let a couple people jump on. But you are here because you want to understand lab testing. It's kind of a big, wow, how do I understand all the lab tests out there? There's literally thousands of tests. And the question is, what do I do? Which ones do I test for? So I'm here to kind of break it down, the most common tests that people, if they want good health, to understand which ones to run on a regular basis. So we are going to do that with you guys tonight. And if you have questions, feel free to just jump in and add things and just say, hey, what about this? And then as always, I know this is a Instagram live class, so you can come and go and know that it's always recorded for your convenience, because I get it. It's life. Things happen. Kids come and go, dogs bark, which I might have kids coming and going and dogs barking also. But yeah, it's life. And I don't take offense to it because that's part of not stressing out when it comes to your health. Okay, so we're just gonna get started. Lab testing 101. Where do we begin, right? First of all, when it comes to your health, there's just this really good statement that says, test, don't guess. Because I will tell you, probably 9 times out of 10, as a practitioner, we are just seeing all these different supplements out there, different diets, different trends, and you can eventually over time just feel like you're getting the runaround with, well, I should be taking this supplement and eating this food and doing this latest exercise. And while that's good and you want to be able to be proactive in your health, sometimes you can be doing too much. You can be taking too many supplements. You can be doing the wrong diet. You can be over-exercising, believe it or not. And so my goal is to just inform you guys to understand when it comes to your health, very advisable to take the time and test what is going on with your body versus just guessing and throwing anything at the wind and spending tons of money and getting nowhere and getting frustrated, right? We all have those cupboards of supplements that are packed, just so many different ones that we bought because we thought, oh my gosh, it's the next greatest thing that's gonna make my symptoms and ailments go away. So while you have good intentions, definitely keep those supplements in mind because you might actually get to use them, but now you know how to use them, okay? So I'll give you an example. I do a lot of hormone testing for patients, and in general, estrogen, as women, we think we have estrogen problems. Believe it or not, a lot of times us women can actually not have enough estrogen, and sometimes those supplements actually bring estrogen down. And so that's a great example of test, don't guess. Another great example of testing and not guessing is the very first test that I think is very vital to understanding health and wellness is, where are your vitamin D levels at? If you live in a northern climate like I do, I live in Minnesota, and probably half of the year we are in a dark, cold situation, and we're not getting daily exposure to the sun, which, if you did not know, vitamin D is a natural production when you get sunshine on your skin, and you only need like 15 minutes a day, and it's usually about when the sun rays are kind of at their, not at their hottest, but just as they're starting to get warm. All you have to do is go outside with your hands and your face and just get 15 minutes of exposure daily if you can, and not if you're in Minnesota, it's too cold. But if you're in a warmer climate, that is a natural way to get vitamin D production. Now, if you are not in the warmer climates, we are finding that people are probably 80% of the time deficient in vitamin D. So yes, you want to test where your vitamin D levels are at. I cannot tell you how many times we ran a vitamin D just general panel on a patient and they were deficient, and not by a little, a lot, okay? And so vitamin D, I have this number here for you guys because often you'll get tested and then it'll be like, oh, well, you're good enough. Well, in the natural realm, we like to see people at least at 60, okay? Sometimes 50, though, like the 50 to 60, that's kind of the golden sweet spot, because what does your vitamin D do for you? It helps with bone health, helps with your mood, it helps with hormone production, helps with your immune system, and you name it. If you have any symptom, chances are you have some kind of vitamin D deficiency happening. Now, I will say another thing for test, don't guess. Let's just say, oh, there's Isaac, he's playing basketball. If you are taking vitamin D as a supplement, it does happen where you can actually be taking too much, and that does happen. So if you are on a high dose vitamin D over the winter, and it's just to say it's like, 10,000 international units that you've been kind of taking all winter, you definitely will want to get your vitamin D tested, because you can actually go too high, right? And so that can actually be like, oh, we don't want to go too high, because that can cause its own issues. I will be sharing with you guys codes later on, but if you are curious about your own vitamin D and you just don't want to be running into the doctor every single time to test your vitamin D levels, there's a company that I use, everlywell.com, and you can order your own vitamin D test, and it's a finger prick. And actually I'm going to be sharing a lot of these that you can order from everlywell.com. It's a finger prick, send it off, and they give you the results. And then usually you can go from there if you want to talk to a natural doctor or your physician or your chiropractor. Okay, so vitamin D, very vital to know where you stand with that. That's kind of a baseline. Number one, how's that going? If it is low, you will find you have a lot of issues symptom-wise, and it's kind of like a building base if you are low in vitamin D. And I think most people know that, okay? But now that we're entering into sunshine in the northern climates, you typically do not need to be taking vitamin D supplementation, because hopefully you're gonna be walking outside, getting some fresh air, getting movement, and getting some sunshine finally, right? And I think for those who live here, you can just see the mood difference when it comes to the change in weather and climate. It's like everyone is a new person, and you're just like, oh, finally, here we are. We're all happy together again. Okay, the next one that we like to test is your iron, hemoglobin, ferritin, okay? This one maybe you've heard of. It's like, where is your iron at? Do you have anemia? Maybe you've heard those statements before. The reason it's really important when it comes to where your iron levels are and your hemoglobin is because you have red blood cells. Your red blood cells have iron in them that bind to oxygen. If you are low in iron, guess what's going to happen with your ability to bind oxygen? It's going to go down. And so you're going to have fatigue, you're going to be pale, you'll be dizzy, all sorts of random symptoms. Not typically, like you'll feel pretty like wiped out, and especially you'll notice females, during your menstrual cycle, you can feel really tired and fatigued, and that's because you're bleeding, right? And so if you don't have enough iron, yes, it affects so much. Now, you can also have other situations where you're not necessarily iron deficient. You can also have B12 deficiency. You can also have other types of, situations where you're not getting enough other cofactors, such as, hold on, I have my notes, folate. Okay, so folate's really important with red blood cells. Okay, if your iron is low, it can mean a couple things. It could mean that you're not getting enough iron in your diet. It could mean that you might be having bleeding happening somewhere, like menstrual cycle, or sometimes you can have cancers where you're bleeding. It can mean you have hypothyroidism. Okay, so how would you boost iron naturally? I like to prescribe what's called desiccated liver. It is a very high absorption of iron that's in liver, and it also has other cofactors of vitamin A and CoQ10, and it's a really nice way because it's food-based, but it's in a supplement. They dehydrate out grass-fed liver and they put it in a capsule. And so I'll have patients go on that, and it's like, boom, they feel instantly better because guess what? Now they have oxygen coming into their system. The iron is able to be there to give them that energy to do all their cellular reactions, okay? Other ways to get iron in, there's plant-based and there's animal-based. Animal-based is gonna be, your red meats, grass-fed, please, right? We want the healthy animal giving you healthy food. The other high iron sources that are plant-based are going to be something called spirulina. That's a really high source. Sometimes molasses. You would think, what? Molasses? Yep, that one sometimes is high in iron. And then you have other things like lentils that has high in folate and iron. So you can look those up, but I'm giving you some of the key ones that really do help. When it comes to iron supplements, often you have to be a little bit careful because they can be so synthetically made that they can cause constipation. That constipation is no fun, and it's more than likely not going to really get good absorption if it's causing you a constipation. So there are really good brands of iron supplements out there, but you really have to do your research and homework because they can upset the digestive tract. So that's why I like desiccated liver. And you can get those on Amazon, easy to find, work really well, and it's food-based, okay? And I have the ranges there for you guys so that you can understand if you ever have labs ran. Usually it'll tell you if you're high or low when it comes to your iron levels. Often with a iron test, you will have something else called the CBC, or the complete blood count, okay? With that, it's counting all your red blood cells and your white blood cells. And it's very important to say, hey, how are you doing with the amount of red blood cells you have and the amount of white blood cells you have? Because if you have a lot of white blood cells, it can mean you have an infection. And there's different types of white blood cells. There's ones that can mean you have a parasite infection. There's some that mean you're having allergies that are flaring up your system. You can also have where the red blood cells are low, which could mean some kind of other disease happening, okay? Same with the red blood cells. They can be big, they can be small, they can be kind of sickle-shaped. And so it's really important to say, hey, how is my blood doing for me? Because it really, right, is going through your whole system on a regular basis. Like 6 liters per minute is pumped through your system. And your blood brings all the nourishment and oxygen and gets rid of carbon dioxide. So it's a really important, management system for you, okay? And so you can kind of pick up on anemias. Unfortunately, yes, cancers, allergies, blood clotting diseases, and then just where you are at with iron absorption, okay? How we doing? I'm kind of going fast because I don't like to take your time because because I always have so much to share, way too much to share. Okay, so the next test that I like running, obviously, is a blood sugar or the hemoglobin A1C test, okay? They're two separate, but basically the goal is it's testing where is your blood sugar at. I feel like a lot of you understand what blood sugar is. It's so commonly talked about, but you might not understand where should your levels be, okay? So if you are fasting means when you go into the doctor or the lab, usually you're gonna go in the morning, because fasting means you haven't had any breakfast. They take your blood, you haven't had any breakfast, and they wanna see what your blood sugar is doing overnight. If your blood sugar is less than 100, that's good, that's normal, okay? If your blood sugar that's fasting is between 100 to 125, that means pre-diabetes, or they also called metabolic disorder, metabolic syndrome, meaning that you your body's not metabolizing like it should, and that can cause diseases, right? And then here's the actual number that if you go in and you test with a fasting blood sugar, and let's just say it's a consecutive, that every time you go into a fasting blood sugar and it's over 126, that is then the diagnosed diabetes. Type 2 typically, if you're an adult. If you're a child, typically it can be type 1. However, we are seeing younger children being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, which is adult onset. But we all know when you have diabetes, adult onset, it means that your insulin is basically, you're not producing enough. Your pancreas has, I guess you could say, petered out, not a good word to say, but it's worked so hard. And how does that happen? Lots of sugar, lots of stress, lots of just bad food choices, and you guessed it, like you probably know someone in your life that has diabetes, right? It's just so common. Now, there's another test, hemoglobin A1C. Many people hear about this, but they don't like, oh, what the heck is that? So, your red blood cells, they make new every 3 months. Hemoglobin A1C tests from your red blood cells how well you've been managing your blood sugar. So you could have, let's just say, maybe that day that week of, you were doing really good with blood sugar management, and you were, let's just say, hey, you were below 100, but you had a high hemoglobin A1C. That's just gonna tell us you are not managing blood sugar for the last 3 months very well, okay? So that's where you can see you want your numbers at 5.7 or below. That is a normal. Anything higher than 6.5, yeah, that's another thing considered diabetes, okay? So everlywell.com, another thing, because I know many people just hate going into the doctor. They hate just being like, I gotta pay another copay, I gotta do another, I'm gonna drive, I gotta make the appointment. everlywell.com, I'm gonna give you the discount code later. Again, you can order this, and all these are finger prick blood tests, okay? So some people don't mind that. Otherwise, you're going in and you're getting blood drawn right from your vein. So that's blood sugar. And if you wanted to learn how to manage sugar habits, that's one of my previous classes from, I don't know, probably a good month to 2 months ago. I love talking about sugar management because it's so vital to health. It's kind of a foundational thing that if you are having too much sugar, and not like just white sugar, I'm talking about the rices and the starches and the breads and the pastas. Too much is too much, right? And long term, our bodies are not meant for that much. Our bodies are meant for whole foods, proteins, vegetables, complex carbs like sweet potatoes, right? So they're not meant for rice all the time. They're not meant for white bread all the time, or crackers or cereal. So you guys can check that out at some point. Next test, C-reactive protein. This is a really important inflammatory marker test that you can ask your doctor to run for you. And the reason I like this test is because inflammation starts diseases. You don't always know if you're inflamed, but you can often kind of feel like, you know, your joints are hurting, you maybe have headaches more often, you're gaining weight, you don't know why. What else? You're really tired. You could just have like numbness and tingling happening. So C-reactive protein is an indicator that your body has been fighting inflammation, A, through diet, or B, maybe you had an infection. Maybe something bad happened where your body just wasn't able to regulate itself. And we all know we all were through a pandemic where infections were happening, and some people are having long-term, what we're going to say COVID, right? Or long-term repercussions from those infections. And what it does, it's a marker to help you understand where you're at, so that if you want to like clean up your diet, you know, get your lifestyle turned around, you can see those numbers decline, and that's a good sign. Inflammation long-term equals disease. Okay, so Everlywell also has that, but it's going to be in one of the kind of like the metabolic health profiles. Like you can get C-reactive protein, you can get your lipids, you can get hemoglobin A1C. And so at some point you guys will have to go check out that website, and I have a code for 20% off if you're wanting to do any of these tests. You can pick and choose which ones you want to do, okay? That's what I like, is you get to have ownership of testing your metabolic markers and not having to always go in to the doctor to like, and then pay. You know, honestly, these lab tests, when you have to pay out of pocket thousands of dollars, thousands, right? If you were to do all these tests that I'm telling you, thousands of dollars. But through everlywell.com, and there's other websites too. I just have a code for you guys with Everlywell. They all range around $50 to $100, which is very doable if you want to test these things one at a time. And actually, some of these that I'm telling you are bundled, so you can have fun looking that up. Next one is going to be your lipid panel, and I think a lot of you not that one. The lipid panel is a very common one for heart health, right? Cholesterol, we hear about that one all the time. If you haven't had this tested yet and you're getting older, I definitely recommend getting this one checked out, because it can be an indicator of cardiovascular disease. And there's these things called LDLs, HDLs, triglycerides, total cholesterol. And what that means is, are your arteries plaquing up? Are they having a lot of cholesterol that could gunk up your arteries? Could that put you at risk for a heart attack or stroke? Triglycerides is the amount of fat floating around in your arteries, which we do need to have fat in our system, but for some people too much is not good. However, sometimes if you're doing like a ketogenic diet, yes, you'll see higher triglycerides. I usually tell people, don't be alarmed with that. Doesn't mean you're gonna have a heart attack. You have to kind of walk through it with your natural practitioner on what all these numbers normally mean. But if you get this done, you want to look in to say, okay, I want the bad cholesterol, which is called LDL, to be below 70. I want the good cholesterol to be above 50. I want my triglycerides to be below 150. And most of you know cholesterol, you always hear like your friends say, oh, I have to get it below 200. Otherwise, they're gonna put me on Lipitor, correct? Right? Okay. So then, obviously, there's always natural options to get these numbers down, and hands down, there's so many ways to do it. And diet is huge, right? Sugar is always gonna flare your blood vessels. Stress, exercise is really good, right? For every 5 pounds of fat you have, did you know that it puts on another mile of blood vasculature in that fat that your body has to deal with, that your heart has to work harder for? So that's where weight loss is always good for health. And this just is. So ways to help bad cholesterol are gonna be red rice, yeast, fiber, right? So like, that's where they say oatmeal and other fibrous foods. I do like oatmeal, but I'm going to be cautious if you have blood sugar issues. You want sprouted whole oatmeal. You don't want it broken up so that it's getting to your system too fast. You want things to absorb slowly, okay? What else? Niacin, B vitamins. Red wine has what's called resveratrol, and you can actually take that as a supplement, and that has been shown to increase your good cholesterol, okay? So there's all sorts of little tips. There's a lot more out there when it comes to helping blood, the heart health. Actually too many. So you kind of have to tailor it to what you know is going on for you. But I gave you a couple to consider when it comes to cleaning up the blood vessels, and that's going to be just good diet, right? Good fiber, and lots of polyphenols, which is going to be like your blueberries, your strawberries, things that are really colorful. That's why that red wine is really beneficial with the resveratrol. It's a polyphenol. It's very powerful. Okay. So liver function is going to be your next one that a lot of people like to run. I don't always run this one because I like to use the money in other ways. However, if you have a history of being on medications that are known to affect liver function, yes, then you want to liver function tests done regularly. And I'm pretty sure if you're on medication, your doctor is telling you, okay, we need to test your liver function to make sure that that medication is not damaging your liver, okay? Because it happens. Otherwise, these little words here, like the ALT, AST, ALP, bilirubin, albumin, and total protein, those are just enzymes and or components that your liver has to be able to make and break down. And if they are elevated, it's going to show up on your lab test, and it's going to say, hey, your liver is working extra hard. So we have to figure out, do we get you off that medication? Do we change it up? It can also mean disease, right? It can mean, okay, I've had too much alcohol, I've had too much sugar, which, by the way, I have to mention, sugar can turn your liver into fat, right? And so that can be called fatty liver disease. And so it can be just as damaging as alcohol. And so we are seeing more and more people, even younger and younger, who are addicted to sugar, turning their livers into fat and therefore causing liver damage, okay? I will say it is reversible, usually with a good diet, so that's good to know. Your liver is really good at regenerating, yay. But that just means you gotta be really careful about how much sugar consumption you're getting. There's Luna. Okay, sorry, that's gonna happen. Here's one of my favorite ones to run. Okay. 1 second. You guys. Yes, no barky bark. Okay. All right. So, one of my favorite ones to run is the Thyroid Panel. Okay? So, this one, the reason it's my favorite is because you can feel lethargic, you can have weight issues, you can have, can't concentrate, you can have hair falling out, you can have dry skin, you can have constipation. It's a whole slew of issues when it comes to thyroid dysfunction. Your thyroid gland makes thyroid hormone, and that thyroid hormone has to go into your cells and help you to make energy. It's kind of like your metabolism unlocker. Okay, so it unlocks the energy to your cells so that you can feel good, have your metabolism get established, and basically not have weight issues, okay? You are wired. What the heck, baby girl? Okay, got it? I'm gonna go. Okay, go on. Leave. it's like a child, right? Okay, so when it comes to running the labs, thyroid-wise, this is where I have the biggest problem when it's when I'm asking a patient to get their thyroid panel ran. And so I'll give them this list, okay? So it's called TSH, T3, T4, free T3, free T4, reverse T3, reverse T4, TPO, which is an antibody test, and Hemoglobin antibody test too. So it's like 8 tests. When you go to just get a general lab run, your doctor typically just only runs TSH. That's it. Now, I have a problem with that because TSH, yes, it's a good test. It's just kind of a good flyby screening. But 9 times out of 10, you're going to actually catch the thyroid issue in those other tests, okay? So I even have a book. This book is called Why Do I Still Have Thyroid Symptoms When My Lab Tests Are Normal? It's because the lab tests ran and interpreted for the thyroid are just a little bit, the doctors are just not really digging deep, okay? So we have all these functional medicine doctors out there, there's eons of books that are describing that when you have your thyroid test run, they can say you're normal, but you're actually not, okay? Because we are looking for the subclinical situation where your thyroid is starting to say, help, help, before it turns on fire, okay? So these tests are like my favorite ones to run. Everlywell will have 4 of them. If you want the whole kit and caboodle, you got to work with your good practitioner, and hopefully they will run them all. I have stories where they went in, the patients went in, and the doctor refused. Yes, refused to run the thyroid test. And then we had to send them to another doctor who was willing to work with us. And guess what? They ran them all, and guess what? We found the thyroid disorder, okay? So it's one of these things where I get very frustrated when you as a patient needs help with your health and you do not get the full help. It's a very frustrating process because it's your health and you're paying for it. Why not run a test that's going to be thorough, right? That's my thought. So for this patient, we're able to help her, we're able to be specific, we're able to kind of say, yes, you have a thyroid autoimmune issue going on, okay? Everlywell.com, they're gonna run TSH, free T3, free T4, and TPO. So it's gonna test for thyroid function and if your thyroid is being attacked by your immune system, which is called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Very, very common. People have no idea they have it. You have to specifically ask for the antibody tests on the thyroid panel if you're going through your medical doctor, okay? Any lab tests now, that's another great place that you can go and pick more of the specifics there, and they usually run about $120. The Everlywell test with the discount is like $80, okay? All right, so that's the thyroid panel test. I love that one. Now, if you get that, you want to work with a functional medicine doctor, like a chiropractor or nutritionist or a medical doctor who believes in using supplements and diet, because they're going to look at them completely different than just a standard practitioner, okay? You don't want to be having it where, why are they, oh, not that one. Why are my lab tests normal, but, right, I feel horrible? If you wanted to check out this book, it's by Dr. Datsits Karazian. It's like a long, crazy name, so I'll just kind of hold it right there. You can just Google the title and it'll tell you. Really good book where it dives into what's going on with your thyroid. And you guys, so many people have thyroid issues. It's not even funny, okay? But if you can get your thyroid working for you versus against you, you will be a different person. You'll have energy, your weight loss will happen, you're going to be able to have, healthy pregnancies, you're going to reduce miscarriages, you're going to have a healthy gut. So it's a very, very important gland for us that gets ignored way too much. Okay, next one that I love running. This is the other one that if you are a female, you probably have heard me talk about this in my office a lot. The Dutch Hormone Panel. This has been revolutionary. I cannot tout this test enough. It has been a game changer when it comes to understanding where your hormones are at, okay? It's a urine test that, depending on where you are in your cycle, if you're in menopause or if you are ovulating and you're still having a period, we have to kind of finagle when you urinate on these little test strips. But it's going to test for your estrogen and how you're breaking it down. If you don't break your estrogen down properly, it can actually lead to breast cancer and or endometriosis or PCOS, and or it can cause other diseases, okay? So you want to know how you're breaking down your estrogen and clearing it out of your system. If you're not clearing it out, bad. That's not good. That can create clots, that can create, you name it, breast cancer, ovarian cancer. It can create just like a whole imbalance with your adrenal glands and your thyroid. So too much estrogen in your system, oof, not good. Okay, progesterone also, it tests the metabolites for that. Progesterone is your best friend, ladies. You want estrogen and progesterone to be like yin and yang together, and usually what's happening with women, they are estrogen dominant, progesterone deficient, and all that in between equals symptoms and hot mess, right? PMS, migraines, weight gain, can't get pregnant, can't stay pregnant. What else? Brain fog, irritability, emotional, moody, acne, right? Like you name it, where it's like the daily things we deal with as a woman, but we think it's normal. It's not, okay? Women, we also have testosterone, and we want to break it down well. If we don't break it down well, we can start to have facial hair, thinning hair, acne. We start to get more of a manly body because we have more testosterone. We're not breaking it out of our system very well. DHEA tells us how our adrenal glands are doing. Cortisol tells us how our stress is. If you have too much cortisol, you're going to have belly fat. You're also going to be irritable, and you're not going to sleep well. Okay, melatonin, it tells you where your melatonin is. It'll indicate if you're getting deep sleep. If you're not getting deep sleep, you can't repair your body at night, and that's a big deal. It tells you where your B vitamins are at, how are you doing with protein, and I'm a provider for this test. It is an amazing test, and I've been doing these, oh my goodness, every week, and every time I just have so much excitement because we reveal for my female patients what the heck is going on with them, and it's all the female issues, okay? So I'm a provider. If that interests you, you can message me, you can tell me about it in the office. It is a $399 test. I know it's expensive, however, you can use HSA and flex spending, and then there's a fee for my time to go over a good hour with you, okay? So if you're interested in that, shoot me a message. So many people have just been excited and happy because it's like, oh my goodness, it's finally what's wrong with me hormonally, and we're not guessing, right? Because I can't just throw 100 supplements at you and expect you to heal. No, I need to be specific because every single person has been different, not one person the same, okay? The next test that I love running is the gut dysfunction test. I don't run this a ton. Typically, we're able to kind of manage gut dysfunction through diet and lifestyle changes, cleaning up people's food choices, reducing stress, getting them on probiotics and other gut healing situations. But sometimes there's just like a tough case, and it's usually going to be something like parasites or an infection that their body just can't seem to get rid of. Or they're just a hot mess and they've tried everything. So that helps us to get a little more specific on like, how are they breaking their foods down? Are they absorbing food? Is there an immune inflammation situation happening? Do they have celiac disease? Do they have way more bad bacteria than good bacteria? Do they have a lot of yeast? Do they have parasites, right? And so I like to use what's called Genova Diagnostics, and I am a provider. You sometimes can order from them directly. I think overall you need someone to help you interpret all of the data. So anyways, that's another fun one that I run, and those are like 300 to 400, okay? So sometimes these tests that are kind of like the big, like you get a lot of information, it's actually not a horrible price, but it might seem like it. But if you were to go and do these same tests through the medical doctor and your insurance systems, and you have like let's just say a high deductible, yeah, you're paying thousands of dollars, okay? And it's very frustrating. All right, we're doing good, we're flying. Another fun test that I like to run, if you are deep diving into health and you just are like, I'm eating healthy, I'm doing all the things, I'm sleeping well, I don't have a ton of stress, I don't have any mold in my home, I don't have a parasite infection. So sometimes you just have these tough cookie situations where you've tried all the good things and you're just still kind of not getting anywhere. So then you can have these tests to see where your mutations are in your DNA, okay? Now when I say that, people kind of get freaked out. They're like, well, if I give them my DNA, they're gonna be able to clone me. No, it doesn't work that way. It is actually, you have 3 billion base pairs of DNA, and for them to get all that DNA would take them way too long, years, and I don't think they want to store that kind of data. They just take little pictures of your DNA of the researched genes that correlate with health issues, if that makes sense, okay? So, for example, there's this really common mutation called the MTHFR, or some people like to call it the mother effer, okay? That is a very important gene for you to be able to break down folic acid into something called folate. Folate helps you detox, okay? And so some people, myself included, I actually tested this on myself, and I do have the MTHFR mutation. I like knowing that because I know I can be very specific in nutrition and supplements to override that mutation. And I also learned that I cannot have any fortified foods. Fortified foods are going to be you see them on the back of bread and pasta and crackers, and it'll say enriched or fortified. They put nourishment and nutrients into these foods starting back in the 1970s, 80s, because they were trying to prevent birth defects. It was a noble cause and it was a good idea. However, we are finding so many people have this MTHFR mutation, like 80% of the population now, where they can't break down folic acid into folate. Therefore, it creates toxic levels in your system. So for me, when I have breads and pastas and crackers and cookies and all those things that are fortified, my body does not do well because I have that mutation, right? So I'm really glad I know that for myself. And for me, it makes sense that when I was diagnosed with MS years ago and I was eating all those foods, yes, I was inflaming my system and making it toxic and overloaded, okay? So Strategene Testing, that's the company, and it's really, really good information. It kind of just gives you an idea of like what supplements work good for you, what foods work good for you. And if you like learning about that stuff, the doctor that I follow, it's Dr. Ben Lynch. Here's his book, Dirty Genes, and he talks all about these mutations and how to keep your genes clean. Because I have to tell you this, just because you are, I guess you could say you have a mutation, doesn't mean that's a death sentence. That doesn't mean, oh, I can't live my life normally. No, actually what that means is you have the mutation, and diet and lifestyle and stress turn on and off these genes, if that makes sense. So you don't want your genes turned on for a disease. You want to know how to turn it off. And it's going to be through nutrition, lifestyle choices, decreasing stress, etc. Okay? And so that's a $95 test. You can go to strategene.com, which I think I'll have the link here. But again, Dirty Genes with Dr. Ben Lynch. I like to follow him on Instagram. He gives so much good information. And I really love his supplements because they're geared towards these mutations, okay? All right, we're almost done. I have an honorable mention. Sometimes people can have food allergies and they can also be exposed to heavy metals. Not many people talk about this. Maybe you talk about food sensitivities. And yes, I have tested myself. I've tested my kids. It's a really common one out there. Everlywell does this, and it's a finger prick. And what it's doing is it's going to test for the most common foods that people can be allergic to. Now, for me, when I did this test years ago, my body didn't do well with gluten, and it didn't do well with dairy or eggs, okay? Also, though, at that time, my system was highly inflamed. I was dealing with an autoimmune disorder, and so everything was mad. My gut lining was destroyed. I was having what's called leaky gut syndrome. My food choices and undigested food particles were going into my bloodstream. My immune system was like, what is that? Attack. And then it attacks me and attacks my nervous system. And then it was giving me multiple sclerosis symptoms. So I had to remove those foods for a while. And I tell people it's kind of like you are on fire, which I was on fire. And every time I ate those foods, it was like adding gasoline. So my fire never got to burn out, right? So I had to remove those foods, heal my body, heal my digestive system, heal the leaky gut. And then what ended up happening is I could actually then handle those foods later on. And because my body was like, oh, this isn't going to flare me anymore. And you'll see that often when it comes to allergies and food testing, that a lot of people just kind of have to remove it for a while, chill their body out, heal things, and then they can enjoy them again, obviously in moderation, because they're just inflammatory foods no matter what. And so to this day, I do have dairy. I will randomly have gluten. It's just so destructive. If I do have gluten, it's going to be in the sourdough form, whether it's sourdough crackers, sourdough bread. Definitely organic, definitely non-GMO, if that makes sense, okay? The other thing that is worth honorable mention is heavy metal testing. This is not one that people hear about very often, but it's a very legit, real concern. If you just are very sick often, and if you knew you were maybe exposed to heavy metals in drinking water and polluted areas, or if it was actually passed down from your mom can pass on heavy metals to you, okay? It's kind of a sad thing, but the most common thing that's been passed down, Luna, is lead. Good girl. She's like playing with her. You're just making all sorts of noises. Okay. So lead, believe it or not, is passed down very commonly during pregnancy. Lead actually likes to take up in the bones. And even though we're not necessarily exposed to lead these days, it's definitely a generational thing, and you can look that up with heavy metal toxicity. The other thing that is passed down is mercury, and the most common sources are going to be the amalgam fillings, and just like if you deal with a lot of paint solvents, a lot of chemicals, a lot of those have heavy metals. And then other things that have lead are going to be lipsticks and chocolate. Yeah, lipsticks and chocolate. And so you want to really be sure when you are picking healthy makeup, you definitely want to make sure that it's not going to have mercury in it. And then you literally can research online chocolates that have the least amount of lead in them. And I'm sorry I'm ruining it for you, but yeah, chocolate has lead. So anyways, you can get those testing done, and then how would you deal with a heavy metal situation? There's detox protocols, and one of the common ways to detox are going to be chlorella and spirulina, good gut health, fiber, and then there's other things that latch onto heavy metals, and there's going to be like fumaric and humaric acids. There's all sorts of cool products out there that you can do heavy metal detoxes under the guidance of a natural health care practitioner, because sometimes you can go too much and it can kind of cause where your body gets overwhelmed with the detox process. Okay, all right, so then that is an honorable mention. I want to tell you guys how you save money on these lab tests, because I know there's a lot of them. And if you're kind of just feeling like, I just want to get a general idea of where I am with my health, I'm going to say your vitamin D, your blood sugar, lipid panel is always good. Women for sure, a hormone panel, and for sure a thyroid panel. Some of those other ones can be specialized, but you want to know how you're doing with inflammation. You want to know how you're doing with blood sugar management. And on my Instagram, on the post, I have a list of everything that I like running. And whether or not you pick it off here and there, where you're like, okay, I feel really led to do this blood test, most of these you can do on your own through the everlywell.com or the anylabtestnow.com. And if you wanted to work with me on the gut health and the hormone health, you can reach out to me on that, because that takes kind of a lot to break down. It's kind of a little educational process, okay? If you want that link for the discount, it's in my BioTree link. You get 20% off, and have fun shopping, you guys. It's gonna be awesome. And if you were like, help, I need some guidance on interpreting this, you can always DM me, okay? I'm here for you. And hopefully you learned on what are the most common ways to test for blood testing and why. All right, thank you.